quickly introduce yourself for everyone?
Absolutely. So I'm Colleen Stanley. I'm president of SalesLeadership, and we're a sales development firm. And so we teach, sales training, sales management training, keynotes. I do some consulting, but every bit of our work is wrapped around the emotional intelligence component. And so what we're really working with sales organizations on is, Veronica, really how to integrate the soft skills training with their hard skills training, because then and only then do we believe that really people are equipped with 100% of the skills to be successful. So that is our mission.
Perfect. Sounds super interesting, Colleen. Before we really dig deep into that topic, can you explain the expression emotional intelligence and how emotional intelligence in sales looks like?
So big question you've started out with. Let's start with the definition. And there's many definitions out there. And what I always like to do is encourage people to take a look at this definition first. Emotional intelligence is really knowing what emotion you're feeling, why you're feeling that emotion, and then probably most important, how that emotion affects how you show up. Because what we've seen in our years of sales and sales leadership training is that most sales organizations focus on teaching, mastering the hard skills of sales. I often refer to that as the sales IQ. Now, these skills are very important. These skills can be product knowledge, consultative selling skills, questioning skills, negotiation, prospecting, business development. However, in our years of bringing this work to our clients, we have found that the sales EQ skills are important for the execution of the hard selling skills and behaviors. Quick example. I think everyone listening or reading today has probably heard the complaint. Salespeople talk too much, listen too little. Now, we've all read the books, attended the training that said you need to listen more. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But what we're sometimes lacking in our training and coaching sessions is emotion management, impulse control training, because that's when a salesperson either gets nervous or excited and they start reverting to product dumping, presenting solutions too soon, too often. So that's why the sales IQ is important and the sales EQ is important, and training on both sets of skills.
Okay, and how can I train emotional intelligence?
Well, that's interesting because I think where this has been problematic, and primarily in the sales profession, emotional intelligence has been around for many, many years, but often it resided in leadership training, right? And then if it did get presented to the sales team, it was presented as a separate body of work. So salespeople and sales leaders had trouble connecting the dots, as I would say. So often what I advise salespeople and sales leaders to do is, if you're having a selling challenge, diagnose both ends of the problem. Is this a hard skills training issue, or is it a soft skills? And generally you're going to find it to be both. So let's take another EQ skill of assertiveness, right? So assertiveness is that ability to state what you need nicely. So if you take a look at someone that's, they've got deal slippage, they're writing practice proposals. Well, is it because they don't know how to navigate through a complex decision-making process? Or is it because they lack the assertiveness to state what they need? And what they need is to have a conversation with all the buying influences in order to put together the right recommendation, a complete recommendation. IQ, EQ. So that's where we're always balancing it out. What's really the root cause for lack of performance, achievement, potential, and even good attitudes and work ethic?
Putting myself into the shoes of a sales leader, sales manager, let's say I have 50 reps in my team, and I think it might be super hard to detect the lack in emotional intelligence and soft skills in my team. It's far easier to detect, okay, they can't cope with the tool, they don't know my product. It's easy for me to see that and to act on it, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of really one-on-one coaching and sessions to detect a lack in certain soft skills. How can I fit that into my day-to-day work as a manager?
So that is a great question because managers, I mean, they are running crazy, right? They're managing up, they're managing down, they've got operations issues, they've got sales goals to hit. So the first step I would recommend for sales managers is to start studying emotional intelligence. Everything in life starts with a decision, right? And so when you make a decision that I'm going to become masterful on a topic, it starts with education. So maybe it's reading articles, attending, a podcast or reading a blog like this. So educate yourself first. Then what I would do is probably get really some official formal training or coaching, because where emotional intelligence is misunderstood, it always remains in that soft theoretical. And people don't have frameworks by which they can teach their team to be empathetic, to manage their emotions so they can remain stable during tough negotiations, impulse control, optimism. So when you get with a good teacher, trainer, or coach, that's when you can get the frameworks, and then you are able to transfer the knowledge that will make everyone more successful.
And then as a manager, I would probably always ask, okay, what is the return on investment, right? When I train on emotional intelligence, like what do I get out of it? What is the benefit? When do I see the benefit actually? Can you tell a bit about measuring success of emotional intelligence and soft skill training?
Yes, and I'm so glad you're asking these questions, because really this is where we've got to have the real conversation. It is easier for all of us to do the tactical sales coaching. And I love tactical sales coaching, pre-brief a call, debrief a call. How do we unseat the incumbent? How do we launch a new product, right?
Yeah.
And so it does take some deeper thinking to incorporate the soft skills. So I'll give you a quick example. We worked with a client, we've worked with them for several years. And at the retreat, the sales leader said, I really want us to take a deeper dive into empathy, which is a major, powerful influence skill. So taught them the framework for empathy. How do you actually step in to what somebody else is thinking or feeling and state that? 2 weeks later, I got an email from one of the participants, one of the salespeople, and he said, I just landed a 6-figure contract by demonstrating empathy. So it wasn't a hard selling skill, but because he knew how to demonstrate empathy, he was able to move a rather hostile prospect, make an emotional connection, and convert that to business. So that's just one of the case studies I have here. So again, I think it's the diagnostic, Veronica, when we're looking at, if I keep teaching the same methodology, and I love methodology, no process, you don't have a playbook, really hard to coach. But if I'm running into the same issues over and over again, as a sales leader, I have to ask the question, am I working on the right end of the problem? Because if you've told somebody they can actually demonstrate the skill, but they're not bringing the skill to a sales conversation, I'd almost guarantee you have more of a soft skill execution issue than a hard skill execution issue.
Yeah. I think empathy is a good keyword here. Sales is more and more getting into the direction of, okay, let's be empathetic. You have to build a relationship with your customers by showing empathy to do your sales. Especially in the beginning of this year when the pandemic hit, everyone was, yeah, you have to show empathy, right? You don't know what the people go through at the moment, what the company goes through at the moment. So
Right.
be personal, be empathetic. But how do you show real empathy? Because I think just an email opener saying, I hope you're well in those uncertain times is not really a good example of showing real empathy as a salesperson.
And that is a great example, because I do think the salesperson that sent that email is well intended, but this is where they're lacking knowledge on how to actually demonstrate empathy. So you might take that same sentence, uncertain times, because you might be experiencing A, B, and C. So it's only when you can demonstrate the emotions associated with uncertain times. As it relates to that buyer in their industry, that's when the recipient of the email reading it says, wow, I like this person. They get me. And you know what? A basic human need is to be understood, right? And so, first and foremost, when you study empathy, we often think empathy is a verbal skill, which it is, but the step to really mastering empathy is mastering your ability to think. And thinking requires slowing down, focusing, taking time. Gosh, what is the day in the life like for my buyer today? So you can't do drive-by empathy. You can't speed up empathy. Empathy is a thinking skill, and then it's a verbal skill.
Yeah. Do you think in the current sales world where everything is about quota, like sending out thousands of emails per week and doing 100 of calls per week to actually hit your goals and be rewarded by your manager, by your company, do you think in this world there is actually a place for empathy?
Yes, and I think where I would have empathy for sales managers is that they're going to measure the numbers because that's something I can control, right? And I can control if it goes to this next stage. Now, these might be prospects that shouldn't even be in the pipeline. They shouldn't be progressing, but I can at least track that. Now, when you take a look at what's behind control is fear. If I can't control this, I'm fearful I can't control the outcome. So it's even recognizing in ourselves when we're trying to control something or measure something, why am I doing that? So what I would say is when you're taking a look at the metrics, and I don't think this will be brand new for people, but you've always got to be looking at the metrics. What's my return here? Am I quantity over quality? Now, when you start taking a look at quality over quantity, that requires the EQ skill of delayed gratification. So let's say I'm going to make a phone call and then I'm going to get a voicemail and then I'm going to follow up with an email. Well, all of that requires delayed gratification because prior to making that outreach, I should craft a personalized message, right? Because as a friend of mine said, and she's worked in the technology space for years, she said, in this day and age, all we are doing is speeding up the amount of garbage we're sending out. So, right. And so I just thought it was the funniest thing, but she's very good. I mean, she's worked in the SaaS world and that. So when you take a look at it, that requires self-awareness. As a manager, what's my fear if I don't set that goal of 100 dials a day and this? Well, maybe your fear is you don't know how to coach to delayed gratification. Maybe you've got to look at your own delayed gratification and you're going to have to invest more time in helping your salespeople reach out with quality messages versus quantity. Because quantity, frankly, is very easy. Call, voicemail, email, no thinking, and no connection with the prospect or customer.
Yeah, definitely, totally agree. And also think the fear of losing control is something that the pandemic showed us as well with the whole home office topic. I had the feeling everyone wanted to control. Some managers had huge issues sending their team to remote work because they couldn't see them working. And if they can't see doing the work, then they don't believe they are actually doing the work, which kind of goes in the same direction here.
Yes. And you know what's interesting about that? When I was a VP of sales and a regional manager, I didn't know it. This was, 20 some years ago. So now we call it remote sales management. Well, back then that was just normal. So I had, when I was a VP of sales, 130 sellers all across the United States. They were all in virtual offices. Now, what I recognize today is we probably simply hired self-starters, people with good integrity, intrinsic motivation. And so when they're worried about people not getting their work done, maybe you need to back up and look at your hiring process, right? And, and in fairness, for some salespeople, they don't work well in a home office. It doesn't mean that they're lazy. They don't have a work ethic, but these are the type of people that they work better in an office environment. So in fairness, I've seen some salespeople that were hired, they signed on with a company because they've got this really hip environment. You got the dashboards up, there's music. I mean, it would drive me crazy, frankly, because I work a little bit better when I'm, in the quiet. But that's where, when you're taking a look at why somebody isn't succeeding, maybe you put them in an environment that's just not where they're going to succeed. And that's okay, right? Now, the second thing I would say is, measuring the results. Because if a person's getting the results done, that's where, okay, wait a minute, I don't need to worry about the number of hours they're working. But if they're not getting the results, then I'm going to back up to, okay, where are the results falling apart? Is it the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, end of the funnel? So I think there's a lot to talk about there with the remote offices.
Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned the hiring process. Like when I'm hiring a new sales reps, a sales team, what, especially regarding soft skills, do I need to look for? How do I detect if a sales rep has the soft skills they need for that job?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because in my latest book, I devoted 9 chapters to it. And I don't do active recruiting or anything, but I know personally, I have had some, let's say, missteps in hiring, right? And it's painful, especially in a small company, right? And so here in the first 9 chapters, here's a few things I would have you take a look at. One would be that delayed gratification. I call it impulse control. So there was a study done back in the 60s by Dr. Robert Michelle at the University of Stanford, right? And it's called the marshmallow study. And so what this study was is that they took marshmallows and they got a group of 4-year-olds together. I'm giving a clip notes on this, and set a marshmallow in front of these children. They were in a room by themselves. And they said, now, if you don't eat the marshmallow, when we come back in 15 minutes, we will give you a second treat. So when they started watching these kids, some were able to manage their impulses, others just started eating it right away. Well, what's interesting as you follow these children through life, the ones that were able to delay the gratification scored 200 points higher in SAT scores. They actually achieved more personally and professionally. Delayed gratification. So how does that play into sales? When you study prospecting, business development, that is day in and day out work. You've got to put in the time to calendar block. If you're going after major accounts, that can be longer deal cycles. That takes delayed gratification to stay in touch and be in touch. And skill mastery. Practice takes a lot of work, but what's behind practice is delayed gratification. So that would be one skill. I would also say accountability, ownership and accountability, which we call self-regard. So when you find people that have high self-regard, they have no problem raising their hand and say, I made a mistake. Now, how this plays out in an organization, as the sales manager, you're not sitting there going, who done it? How to get done? When you've got a person that's raising their hand, then you can identify the problem and solve the problem quickly. And these are generally people that are also highly coachable. And I don't know about you, but I have had some people on my team many, many years ago that weren't so coachable. So how do you get someone to be better when they're taking every bit of feedback personally? And that's due to lower self-esteem, lower self-worth. So, you've got delayed gratification, you've got empathy, locus of control is another one I'd interview for. And again, this kind of falls in the same realm, but these are the people in life that have a conviction, a belief, and a philosophy. If it is to be, it's up to me. So they're not excuse makers. So in sales, you can get some people that have external locus of control. I don't get enough leads. My SDR doesn't qualify the leads. I don't get enough training. I don't get enough support. I don't. And these are the victims of the world. And victims of the world never transform the world. And frankly, they never usually get out of the victim mentality unless there's a shift in mindset. So those are 3 soft skills that can make a huge difference in achieving hard sales results.
Yeah, perfect. Let's imagine I'm a sales rep, and now you're explaining the different soft skills, the 3 I should have, and maybe I learned for myself that maybe one of them or even 2 doesn't really fit to me. Like I don't really have those soft skills. How can I train it? Like, is there a way I can, yeah, train my soft skills and notice actually that I'm missing them.
You know, the mega skill, I would say, and the foundational skill for improving all of the other EQ competencies, because there can be as many as 15 to work on and improve. I would start with emotional self-awareness. And that is really carving out quiet time each and every day. And it can just be getting still and getting your mind ready for the day, but it also can be asking reflective questions. You know, what triggers showed up yesterday that caused me to respond in a manner I regret? Was I the trigger? Was I not being aware of my tonality, my intensity? Did I demonstrate empathy with my salesperson before I started giving advice? And so emotional self-awareness is the key skill. It's the mega skill, because we always teach our clients that what you're not aware of, you cannot change. So that is where I would start. But, you know, emotional self-awareness takes a certain degree of humility as well, because that's where you've got to be willing to say, okay, I've got some blind spots here, and I'm willing to work on those blind spots. And that's where you can seek the help of advice, mentors, friends, and colleagues, you know, people that really truly have your back. And then they'll hold up the mirror and say, yeah, you might need to work on this one.
Um, Okay, so of course, as a rep, it's important that I have emotional intelligence, that I have certain soft skills to connect with the customer. But of course, my customer themselves have certain soft skills, certain ways they act, they feel. Is there a way I can detect how my customer actually is thinking or is behaving so I can target my sales accordingly?
You know, this is where I would say you're going to have something called emotional attunement, and
Mhm.
you're tuning into another person's emotional state. But remember, before I can tune in, I've got to be paying attention. And so, what I've seen happening in business and in life, we are actually teaching ourselves to be highly distracted. So, empathy is a paying attention skill. Self-awareness is a paying attention skill. But if we are sitting there, you know, and you've got your phone and you're constantly doing this and it's beeping and it's blowing up, the fact is you are training yourself to be non-EQ, because high EQ is about paying attention. So we always teach our salespeople, read and relate to other people. Well, reading and relating is tuning in. What's the conversation that's being said? What's the conversation that's not being said? What's the question not being asked? Did the customer's facial expression change on a video call? Did the tonality change? So it's paying attention and then knowing how to adapt. And that's where I'd say you'd bring in the hard skills on what to say and do after that. So it's tuning in, but tuning in is paying attention. And are you teaching your team to be highly focused, or are you modeling the behaviors of distraction? And I find a lot of sales leaders are modeling distraction. Their offices look like a command and control center. We got laptops, we got phones, and then as you're running your sales meeting, you're allowing everybody to take calls, emails. It's ridiculous what's going on. And so then we can't figure out why we don't develop the person in the salesperson. We're not modeling the behavior.
I heard from a lot of people that they think it has become harder to focus due to remote work, especially like that video calls are far more distracting than meeting one-on-one in person. Do you have any tips on how to focus and how to really detect like facial expressions in a virtual setup?
So one thing, I think you've got to manage your external environment. You know, I think there's even a book titled Willpower is Overrated. You do not have the willpower that if you've got your smartphone and it's beeping and dinging, you do not have the willpower not to look down, get distracted. And then it can take you as much as, in some cases, 10 to 15 minutes to get back into very focused thought. So manage your external environment. You know, I see people that they have their email alerts popping up. What is that about? I mean, you know, and, you know, so you're in this constant fight or flight state. So I don't have email alerts. I calendar block my calendar very tightly. So I have very intentional time when I do what I call, and I think Stephen Covey would call it quadrant 2 work. I'm working on the important and not the urgent. Then I have time to answer email. Then I have client calls and I have appointments. I have prep. So at the beginning of the week, I very intentionally calendar block my calendar, but I also leave white space because this thing called life, there's going to be new requests that come in from customers and prospects. So I am very tight on managing technology and managing my time. And in fact, anybody that knows me will call me the phone police because I will call you on it. If I'm meeting with you and you're checking your phone, I'm like, which meeting are we in? Okay, which meeting are we in? And anybody that knows me knows you're not bringing that thing out when you're in a meeting with me. So time, technology, manage it. Not that hard to focus. Make a decision to focus.
One a bit more personal question. What was the moment in your career, in your life, where you noticed, okay, wait, all those hard skills are super helpful to know, but actually the soft skills is where I need to start?
I was very fortunate about, I'm going to say 11 years ago, a good friend of mine, Marty Lassen, she and her business partner had been teaching EQ in the leadership world. And so we sat down and she goes, you've got to incorporate this in your sales training, leadership training processes. And I looked at her and I went, what is emotional intelligence? I didn't even, and much less put the words in with the word sales, right? So for me, it was really a discovery process. And as I started studying it, I became aware of how many interactions I have personally blown up. Didn't manage my emotions, got too impatient, made decisions because I wasn't really slowing down to think and then execute. So I think once I was exposed to the body of work, I saw where sometimes I was under more stress than I needed to be. I wasn't bringing my best self to conversations. Always had a lot of success. See, that was never the issue. It's how can we have success and have joyful lives, productive lives, stressless lives. And there's a way to do it. It's not an either or component, right? And so that to me was my aha, is once I started studying it, I was realizing how many areas that I can improve on personally and professionally by mastering these skills. So I've worked pretty hard on it over the last decade.
I bet a lot of readers and listeners now also want to educate themselves in emotional intelligence. Um, what resources can you recommend, of course, besides your book, which, of course, everyone should read who's interested in emotional intelligence and sales? But where did you start? What resources can you recommend to educate oneself?
Absolutely. So, I would start with a lot of the books written by Daniel Goleman. I would say he's really the person that is credited for bringing this work outside of the academic world into the commercial world. He has several books on this: emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and Veronica, to your point, he has a book titled Focus. Might want to pick that one up. Then I would also read any book that talks about brain science, because when you start studying emotional intelligence, you'll also see that neuroscience ties tightly in with that. And I'm trying to think of the titles off the top of my head. Scott Helford wrote a great book, Activate Your Brain. That'll talk about some of this. There's Joe Dispenza, and I believe he's got a few books on belief systems and how those can affect your emotions and your actions. So read the good sales books. I want you to continue reading those. But I believe a great salesperson learns, studies, and masters the physiology of sales, which is your emotions, the psychology of sales, knowing yourself and knowing others, and then also consultative sales skills. So when you master all three of those, you've got the complete set of skills for success in life and business.
Perfect. I'll definitely note everything down and put it in the list attached to the article. Um, I'm a big fan of really actionable advice. So I think there's so much great resources out there that you can read. But often I'm like, yeah, and what is the how? Like, how do I now do that? It all makes totally sense to me, but there's
Yes.
also this little thing missing. So maybe if you could give one really actionable advice that someone can take and put into action in their life right away, what would that be?
So one actionable item is that, let's start with emotion management, because my belief is if you don't remain stable, you're not able to execute knowledge, skills, and habits, right? So first of all, we might all find ourselves getting triggered, even though we've done the visualization, we visualize ourselves as a calm person, then you end up in that selling situation where someone's lobbing new things. So number one, recognize when you're getting emotionally triggered and take 3 deep breaths. Now, this is what's interesting. This is taught by people that study meditation and the Navy SEALs. Because when you take 3 deep conscious breaths, what you do is you send a message to that part of your brain that's getting triggered, and it says everything's going to be okay. The second thing, in order to remain calm, is when you find yourself getting triggered, simply state the emotion. I'm getting upset. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm getting irritated. By stating the emotion, you take it out of what's called that crazy brain, that reptilian brain, and you move it to your prefrontal cortex, the logical brain. So once I am able to be calm and relaxed, then I have the resources to bring to the conversation the right skills, the right attitude, curiosity, questioning, rather than impatience, frustration. Okay. So that's where I would start, is really getting a handle on not getting emotionally triggered so you can show up how you want each and every day.
Perfect. That's exactly what our readers and listeners want to hear. I will practice it myself. I will keep it in mind.
I always make a joke around our house. I'll say, my husband does a lot of deep breathing. I have no idea why. I think I do.
Okay, perfect. Well, Colleen, I thank you so much. That were actually all the questions I noted down for myself. So if you don't have any questions for me, or if you don't have any other closing remarks you want to share with the audience, I
Yeah.
think,
Oops, excuse me.
no, go ahead.
If they're looking for additional resources, I would also suggest going to our website. It's salesleadershipdevelopment.com. We actually have a free salesperson EQ assessment that they can take and get a report. Lots of podcasts, lots of articles. So if you want a place to get started, lots of free resources there. And we're happy to help and contribute those to your audience.
Yes, I have already been on that website, and that's really true. A lot of great resources there. So everyone should make sure to check it out. And yes, then that's it from our side today. Again, thank you so much, Colleen. Really appreciate it.